Welcome to the first episode of the Battle Frontier Research Lab. Here, experimental teams are designed, tested, and analyzed for the Battle Frontier. With every battle, we learn about the latent potential of each Pokemon and Pokemon teams. In this episode, we designed a team using Metagross, Lapras, and Dusclops for the Pokemon Emerald Battle Tower. I came up with this team because I wanted to start this series off using Pokemon that I love but also synergize well with each other. I already had all these Pokemon trained as well, so I didn't need to go training any others. Metagross has been proven to be one of the most powerful Pokemon within the Battle Frontier. It has very high attack and a great moveset, and it's also one of my favorite Pokemon and one of my favorite shinies. I wanted to start this series off doing quite well and to get somewhat far, so choosing Metagross seemed to be a great option that fit a Pokemon that was one of my favorites and also had the power level to do well in the Frontier. Branching from Metagross, I wanted a Pokemon on the team that covered some of Metagross's weaknesses, which are fire and ground, so it could act as a positive or a neutral switch in. And I wanted a Pokemon that had special attacking moves because Metagross is going to have all physical ones. I already had a Lapras trained, and Lapras is also, again, my top favorite Pokemon. It's just so pretty, and I love how it's kind of like a Loch Ness monster. The Lapras that I had built was a spit build, so it had Surf, Psychic, Ice Beam, and Thunderbolt. It was also quite bulky too, and Lapras does resist fire, which Metagross is weak to. So to me, this fit a bunch of criteria I was looking for in a Pokemon to complement Metagross. I have also used Lapras before in the Frontier, and it has exceeded my expectations. Its ability to take hits while also dealing out even more is quite impressive, so I definitely wanted to try this out again on this team. For the third Pokemon, I wanted another Pokemon I could safely switch into from either Lapras or Metagross, so I didn't want something that had overlapping weaknesses. I thought about Dusclops because I originally used Dusclops in the Frontier as like one of my original teams, like from maybe a year or two ago. I don't even know at this point. And Dusclops definitely exceeded my expectations in being able to handle a lot of the Pokemon in the Frontier. I also do just love Dusclops. That's why originally I trained one, because from the movie Jirachi Wishmaker, there's a couple scenes where the magician has a Dusclops, and it just brings back so much nostalgia. I just love the Pokemon. I also did recently shiny hunt a Duskull and did train up the shiny Dusclops, and it just looks so cool, so I'm looking for really any excuse to put it on the team. But the logical reason being the fact that it's tanky, it's a good switch in from either Lapras or Metagross because there are no overlaying weaknesses. It seemed to be a good match for the team. So on the team we have the physical attacker Metagross, special attacker Lapras, and the just mega tank to handle other Pokemon, which is Dusclops. To me, this is a really cool team because I get to use some of my favorite shinies and some of my favorite Pokemon, and they all complement each other quite well with diversified movesets, or a diversified moveset, while also minimizing the weaknesses. I'm very excited to see how this team plays out and how it handles the Frontier for the Battle Tower. Breaking down each individual Pokemon, I want to first start off with Metagross. I got this Metagross in college. I shiny hunted it, and I didn't give it a nickname because at the time I didn't give Pokemon nicknames, but I really should have. So Metagross has the ability Clear Body, so the opponent can't use moves that lower Metagross' stats. So it works incredibly well because of moves like Intimidate, or abilities like Intimidate, or even just anything to lower Metagross' accuracy. None of that exists, so leading this Pokemon or putting this Pokemon first on the team seemed to be a good option. Metagross's moves consist of Explosion, Meteor Mash, Earthquake, and Rock Slide. There are a lot of other moves we could have considered here, like Brick Break and Aerial Ace. However, these are the moves that I originally had on the Metagross, and I don't really want to switch up too many things. The Meteor Mash is an absolute must because Stab Meteor Mash does so much damage. And then we're obviously going to slap the Choice Band on this Pokemon just to do additional damage. Some other good items I considered were like the Lumberry or even the Quick Claw, but I think the damage that Meteor Mash with Choice Band does is just too good to ignore. I have Earthquake and Rock Slide just as additional coverage. They're just really good moves to have in a lot of situations, but a majority of the time we are going to be using Meteor Mash. The Explosion is kind of just a get out of jail free card. There are going to be a lot of Pokemon like Snorlax or Suicune, just really disgusting Pokemon in the Frontier where we just want to instantly delete them. Having Explosion I think is just really nice. It doesn't really work as well with the Choice Band because we need to swap like in then back out from Metagross, but it still is a great move to have. Metagross is also really good. Again, the typing, it's immune to toxic and other poison moves, which we do see a lot of. The base stats on Metagross are just quite off the charts in like the defense and attack. It's just a very solid Pokemon. It's kind of a no-brainer for a lot of teams, and the fact that it's shiny is even cooler. Getting more into like the nitty-gritty details, Metagross that I used was a lonely nature, so it increased attack and lower defense. It's not super ideal for a nature, but it's the one I got, and I'm quite happy because it does give us that attack boost. The IVs, we're looking at 27 in HP, 1 in attack, which is kind of bad, 20 in defense, 11 special attack, 23 special defense, and 22 in speed. If the attack was in the double digits, I think this Pokemon would have been really good, but the fact that the IVs are quite low in attack is a little bad, but it is what it is. We got a good beneficial nature, and the rest of the stats are quite high. I EV trained this in a full split between HP and attack. At the time of finding this shiny, I didn't even do anything within the Battle Frontier. I was just adding Metagross to my shiny collection, and I knew about EV training, so I didn't do like the most probably optimal split. If I had to redo this, I probably would do a split between HP and speed, where the speed is a specific number to try and outspeed certain Pokemon in the Frontier, and we know this information because it's all online. We obviously would still keep the max attack because we want the Metagross to hit like an absolute truck. But as for Metagross, that is the build that I'm running. For Lapras, we kind of went over it earlier, but we are running the spit build, so we have Surf, Psychic, Ice Beam, and Thunderbolt. Lapras does innately have pretty high special attack and just an absurd HP base stat. We are also running the Shell Armor ability, so our opponent's moves cannot critically hit. The Battle Frontier just seems like they crit all the time, so having this move on, or having this ability on Lapras seems to be quite good. The other ability you could get on Lapras is the Water Absorb ability, which could also be good, but Shell Armor is also just as good. And kind of reiterating before, Lapras is a good Pokemon to switch in from Metagross if we are expecting a fire move. Lapras is resistant to fire, which is great, and then also Lapras does just have this wide variety of special attacking moves that can hit a lot of things that Metagross can't. As for the stats on Lapras, we run a Bold Nature. Bold Nature increases defense and lowers the attack. There are some other natures that I kind of considered during this build, but that's what I have. For the IVs, this actually is a crazy Lapras. We have HP, special attack, and special defense. Perfect IVs. I did spend a good amount of time breeding for this. So going into the individual IVs, we have 31, which is perfect in HP, 25 in attack, 19 in defense, 31 special attack, 31 special defense, and 2 in speed. We did the EVs, I did a split, 128 in HP, 128 in special attack, and then we did 252 in special defense. One of the main reasons why I did originally build maximum in special defense is because Lapras's two of Lapras's weaknesses are electric and grass. It is also weak to fighting and rock, but at the time I was more concerned with the special attacking moves being electric and grass for the team I was putting it on. This might not be the most absolute perfect design build for Lapras, but this is the one that I decided to go with. For the item I put on Lapras, I really wanted to go leftovers because that's what I originally put when I was first using Lapras on the team, and it worked really well. However, Dusclops needs the leftovers, so I had to find another one. I considered Shell Bell, Scope Lens, and Bright Powder. Shell Bell is good because when you deal damage you heal, but it's a little bit less than leftovers, not as consistent. And I'm just not a fan of Shell Bell. I can't get on board with the usage of that. The Bright Powder and Scope Lens. So Bright Powder is going to increase your evasion by 10%, but the Scope Lens is going to increase your critical chance by I think it's 10%. Don't quote me on that. And I decided that because we built Lapras to be tanky or tankier, that the Bright Powder and the survivability of Lapras, I think we'd get more usage out of that. So I wanted to make Lapras a little bit more tanky and a little bit more annoying for other Pokemon to deal with, so we added the Bright Powder to help it survive a little bit more. Getting to the third Pokemon, Dusclops. Dusclops has the pressure ability, which is so good, where the Pokemon are going to use 2 PP every time it uses a move instead of 1. I kind of consider Dusclops on this team to be more of like a chess piece in a sense. Like, I mean, this whole game maybe it could be considered a chess game, but the Dusclops Pokemon. Like, Dusclops is going to be this Pokemon that we're going to be using to kind of navigate and control the game, where like Metagross is more of a Pokemon that I consider to be like just a big punch in the face. Dusclops I consider to be more of like this chess piece that requires a lot more thinking. The moves that we have Curse, Double Team, Confuse Ray, and Protect. I really wanted to use Curse because it's just so cool and it fits the Pokemon so well. So this cuts your health in half, but at the same time it's going to deal about 1/4 of the opponent's HP. So in about 4 or 5 turns, because sometimes Pokemon got leftovers or heal moves, or their HP isn't like perfectly split in 4s, and essentially that amount of turns that Pokemon will be defeated. And Curse, it always hits, doesn't matter, it hits everything, so no Pokemon is safe. Protect is needed because with the pressure ability along with Curse, it's just undeniably amazing. Double Team is there as another way to kind of set up Dusclops to even give it more survivability, to set up additional curses. And then we have Confuse Ray, it's just another way for another Pokemon to deal a little bit more damage. And Confuse Ray also helps better if you need to switch into other Pokemon. It kind of increases the chances of that other Pokemon surviving. So all around, Dusclops is just this beastie unit who wants to set up a curse and survive, and we do run the leftovers so it can gain back some health. Dusclops is immune to fighting and normal moves, which again Lapras is weak to fighting, so it is a great switch in from that. The Pressure and Protect synergy is also really good, and again gaining information but removing moves, even things like Fissure or Hydro Pump, moves that have low PP, they're just going to get whittled away even more. So if these moves are problematic for the team, like I think the big one's going to be Fire Blast. If we send out Dusclops and we can waste 1 or 2 Fire Blasts, like we're really cutting a huge chunk in the amount of times Fire Blast can be used. The Dusclops that I found had a quirky nature, so it doesn't actually do anything. The IVs are 30 in HP, 2 in attack, 8 in defense, 5 special attack, 28 in special defense, and 19 in speed. So overall, I think that's really solid. We really only need 3 main stats on Dusclops being the tank: HP, defense, and special defense. And of those 2, we have 30 and 29 IVs, so that's incredibly high. For the EVs, I did full HP because we really need that, and then a split between the defense and special defense, so we did 128 in each. And a fun fact too is I found this shiny in one day. I did 1,000 encounters, so that was really exciting to get. Looking at the team in general really quick, overall, some of the positives, these are some of my favorite Pokemon. They have no overlapping weaknesses. We have a special attacker, physical attacker, and then a tanky Pokemon, so it kind of has that like cool team synergy. Curse is just an incredible move where it cannot miss and it hits everything, so nothing could be ignored. This is one of the reasons why also I don't need Aerial Ace on Metagross, although it could be helpful, but Curse kind of plays that role. These are all relatively tanky Pokemon, so we can swap between them for pretty good switches. And Choice Band, Meteor Mash on Metagross just kills like 90% of the things, so we can get past a lot of things quickly. Some negatives: this team is slow. Most Pokemon will outspeed all of our Pokemon, and when we do switch in, oftentimes we're going to be hit with 2 moves. Again, we are tanky, but we're not immune or resistant to everything, so that is a huge downside. This team is very susceptible to Earthquake and Rock Slide Pokemon because Earthquake is going to be pretty lethal against Metagross, and if we do end up switching into Lapras, we have to watch out for Rock Slide. And those 2 moves are quite common on a lot of Pokemon just because they can learn them and they're quite powerful in the frontier. One incredibly notable one is Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl is fast and has both of these moves. So if we see that Pokemon, it's probably going to want to Earthquake Metagross. If we switch into Lapras, it's going to hit us with a Rock Slide. Can Lapras survive an Earthquake and a Rock Slide? I don't know. Also, Metagross's attack IVs are quite low, so some Pokemon it should defeat, it probably won't in one shot. Also, Counter is just a quite powerful move, again, really against any physical attacker, but the fact that Metagross's IVs are a little bit lower, some of those Pokemon are going to live with 1 HP, or a little bit above 1 HP, and we will lose Metagross. The overall strategy with this is pretty basic. There isn't too much thought really involved, but we're going to lead Metagross and pretty much spam Meteor Mash because it's going to be dealing a lot of damage. If it's a Pokemon that we know we are going to have trouble with, maybe we just explode and switch into something else. And then from there, if there's problematic moves or Pokemon, we're going to switch into Lapras or Dusclops appropriately, but then play it out from there. Again, there isn't too much strategy with this. It's kind of just building the team itself to minimize weaknesses and have some good switch-ins. So I want to dive into some of the matches. I recorded pretty much them all, but we're only going to note some highlights. I started recording at 14 wins because really anything before that's quite basic. And we really only start getting into some difficult ones at like 21 plus, maybe even greater. But anyway, at round 22, we had a scary Nidoking that opened up with a quick Claw Horn drill. That could have been pretty bad, but we got lucky and it missed. I was worried about the Nidoking, so I didn't end up going Meteor Mass. I just went right into the Earthquake, which I knew the Earthquake would defeat it, but then the opponent went into Kangaskhan, and I decided just to risk the Earthquake, knowing it probably might have counter. It did have counter, and we did defeat it did end up defeating my Metagross. On round 23, there was a Tauros, and as we learned what moves it had, we learned it was Tauros 1, but I was originally scared of Tauros because it can have Earthquake and Flamethrower. What's great is Tauros does have Intimidate, so it doesn't affect Metagross since it has the Clear Body ability. But I ended up switching from Metagross into Dusclops because I wanted to keep Metagross safe, at the same time gathering more information about what this Tauros was capable of. But anyway, we ended up taking down Tauros, and I was also kind of dumb. I kind of forgot Breloom was a fighting type, and I left Lapras in, and the Lapras got smoked. At round 28, there was a Ludicolo, and as I'm learning, Ludicolo is good against my team because I've seen at least, I think, 3 Ludicolo. But anyway, this Ludicolo had the Fire Punch, like Thunder Punch, all those moves. I was debating exploding immediately on the Ludicolo, but I decided to not do that because I really didn't want to lose Metagross unless we had to. But Ludicolo didn't seem like that big of a threat. The next Pokemon they sent out was an Ursaring, which did a lot of damage into wiping my Metagross, but we ended up eventually defeating it. The last Pokemon was a Slacking, and what I'm learning too is that like Dusclops or really any Pokemon with Protect, like it does really well. Dusclops in particular, for at least my team, really well against Slacking, because Slacking cannot do anything against Dusclops since it has the Protect Wombo combo, so that was quite easy. On round 29, I learned that Nidoqueen is kind of painful for my team. Nidoqueen's not like the most powerful Pokemon in the game, but it does have Earthquake and Rock Slide. And again, Earthquake is pretty painful against my Metagross, and then Rock Slide is painful against Lapras. Now, I can defeat a lot of, or pretty much probably all Nidoqueens and Nidokings with Earthquake, but then I'm locking myself into Earthquake. So Nidoqueen could be a problem. In reality, it's not something to build the team around, but at the same time, something we have to be cautious of. At round 32, we ran into a Venusaur, which I learned was kind of scary because Venusaur can have Earthquake and Giga Drain on some of the builds. And I'm pretty positive that Metagross cannot one-shot the Venusaur with any moves other than Explosion, but it's also probably not a Pokemon worth exploding on. There are also some builds of Venusaur which do have that Leech Seed combo, which it can be annoying, but that might be not as detrimental to the team. But we sent that Lapras and that held in and eventually defeated the Venusaur. At round 33, I learned that Gyarados does have some pretty nasty sets against my team because it can have some fire moves like Fire Blast, but also can run Earthquake. There's also the Dragon Dancing build too. It's a really good thing that we have Lapras on the team because Thunderbolt is 4 times effective against Gyarados. But still, these Gyarados builds are quite scary, so it's something that we have to watch out for. The Intimidate on Gyarados, again, doesn't do anything when we lead with Metagross, so that is quite a good positive. And Rock Slide does defeat Gyarados because it is super effective, but at the same time, Gyarados is quite scary. If it does set up one Dragon Dance and Earthquakes and we can't defeat it, if we miss the Rock Slide or something, yeah, that's a tough day. Around 34, there was this really annoying Misdreavus set, Misdreavus 2. It has Confuse Ray, Attract, Thunder Wave, and I think Psychic. But like, man, that was so annoying. That took so long to defeat. And like, we could defeat it, like, don't get me wrong, but it's just, man, once it sets up a Thunder, like, it really hurt your team. But this could be really any team, but this isn't just my team. But that's definitely a Pokemon where if that starts snowballing and really weakens your team, then they send something else out that could follow up with all those Thunder Waves or like Confused Rays, then yeah, you're in a pretty bad situation. But luckily, I think this Mr. Vis was one of the last Pokemon on their team, so it was pretty easy. But it took a lot of time. At round 35, we fought Hariyama 3, which had Earthquake and Cross Chop, which is quite scary against Metagross and Lapras. One of the positives though is that Cross Chop does have a high critical hit chance, but it's not effective against Lapras. But yeah, definitely Hariyama 3 is a scary Pokemon. This trainer then sent out Aerodactyl, which I learned is very scary for this team because of Aerodactyl's speed and the moveset it has. It can have Earthquake, Rock Slide, and Fire Blast, or there are sets with those combination of moves. So all of those moves are very powerful against Metagross and or Lapras, but Lapras was able to one-shot the Aerodactyl with Surf because Aerodactyl is quite squishy. But again, that is a scary Pokemon. At round 38, there was this really annoying Rapidash, and it could be quite detrimental for the team. It has Sunny Day, Overheat, and Solar Beam. So we definitely don't want to keep Metagross out because a Sunny Day Overheat could do a lot of damage, although we are able to use Earthquake, and that will definitely defeat the Rapidash. Rapidash will outspeed, and I'm not sure if that Overheat can one-shot my Metagross. It is something that we could run in the calcs, but it's not the information I have right now. If it does set up Sunny Day, and we switch into Lapras, and it goes right to Solar Beam because it will outspeed, that will do a significant amount of damage to Lapras. The next Pokemon this trader sent out was Whiscash, and man, this Whiscash was mad annoying. It just wouldn't want to die, and I didn't really want to risk too many Pokemon out. So if I could try and kill it with Dusclops, that would have been fine because it did have Fissure. So I wanted to, pressure that Fissure with the ability and Protect. But yeah, it kept healing itself with a rest, and it was pretty annoying. Round 39, we had a Kangaskhan with Shadow Ball, and I thought it was gonna have counter, so I swapped out of Metagross, I'm pretty sure. But the Shadow Ball is really scary because if we swap into Dusclops, it's just gonna do a lot of damage. So I'm learning that Kangaskhan is a Pokemon that we gotta be pretty scared of, and I think this was like the third one we ran into in this whole, or up until this point. So Shadow Ball, Counter, and Earthquake are moves that Kangaskhan can have, and we have to be cautious for. The next Pokemon they sent out was Snorlax, which also had Earthquake, which is pretty scary. And then on top of that, they sent out another Ludicolo, which was the punching Ludicolo. So it's not the one that I really hate, but it's the one that is more powerful against this team. Because again, if Ludicolo uses Fire Punch, we're gonna want to switch into like Lapras, but then Ludicolo's got Thunder Punch, so yeah, probably Dusclops is the move there, but we'll see. We've been playing against a lot of Ludicolos up until this point. Round 40, there was the Curse Wailord build that is so cool. This build's got Double Edge, Rest, then Curse and Amnesia, so you just make this super beefy, awesome Wailord. So I'm actually building one of those, so I'm excited to use. But anyway, this was really actually hard to defeat. I probably could have done something easier against this Pokemon, but I was kind of scared of it. I knew Dusclops, there's no way this Curse Wailord could defeat Dusclops because its only move is Double Edge, which Dusclops is immune to. But I wanted to keep Metagross in and try and keep Meteor Mashing to get that attack boost, but I think it had like 2 curses set up, so and I wasn't getting any attack boost. It was just too difficult, and I didn't want to lose too much health. Eventually, we ended up defeating it, but yeah, it took, I think I noted here, it took like 4 minutes to kill this thing, but we got it eventually. At round 41, I definitely saw the power of Metagross because they leaded a slacking, so I went right into Dusclops, set up those double teams, get that curse off, and just ticked away the game because I could just do that now. Then they went into Metagross, and I was already, again, had some double teams set up, so I was able to pretty much defeat Metagross again with the curse. So pretty good at this point. But the next Pokemon was a Feraligatr, and I ended up just swapping into Metagross and exploding because no Feraligatr has Bright Powder, so I felt pretty safe. And then at round 43 is where we actually lost the streak. So Feraligatr, up until this point, this probably was definitely the third, but probably the fourth Feraligatr we saw, and now I kind of know why. But Feraligatr is quite tough because it can have Earthquake and Rock Slide and has quite high base attack stat. So I ended up Meteor Mashing the Feraligatr. I thought it would do a little bit more damage, but it did not. Feraligatr outsped me and hit me with the Earthquake. So I did a pretty significant amount of damage. I did end up swapping into Lapras because I really didn't want to take any more damage. And Lapras ended up eating an Earthquake, and we didn't quite defeat it with one Thunderbolt, which was kind of disappointing. So Feraligatr did Earthquake again, and pretty much two of my main damage dealers are already at like below half health, which is quite bad. So they then sent out Lantern, which I really didn't want to have Lapras out because of that stab electric move, and I knew it would outspeed to the Lantern on my Lapras. So I went into Metagross hoping I could try and get like a Earthquake out, but it just didn't work out, and we ended up losing Metagross. And at this point the game was already over. That Feraligatr did way too much damage to my entire team, and there wasn't really any recovering from that. So that is where the mistake lied. From there, I learned that Feraligatr is definitely a Pokemon that we need to be careful of because it's quite fast. It can have Earthquake, Rock Slide, and there are some. I think there's at least one build that can have Crunch. That combination of moves can defeat my entire team if we don't, play around it. And these Feraligatrs can have Scope Lenses as well, which like a crit. A high damage crit Earthquake or Crunch is just gonna immediately probably wipe out either Metagross or Clops, even though they're somewhat tanky. Looking back in hindsight, I think Feraligatr is one of those Pokemon where either we go into Dusclops and learn what it is to see if any of the other Pokemon can handle it. If not, then we just explode on it and just call it a day because it's just too lethal. It is kind of crazy though, because I mean Feraligatr obviously is a pretty good Pokemon, like just in general, but learning the game learns all of your weaknesses and exploits that by throwing the Pokemon at it. So Feraligatr is one of those Pokemon for me. Quite scary. So kind of some post-game thoughts and like I guess assessment. I think having a Pokemon like Lapras to switch into from Metagross is not necessarily the best because most Pokemon that have Earthquake will probably have Rock Slide. Or that's just a very common wombo combo. So if I wanted to have a good switch from Metagross into something to like get around that Earthquake, that Pokemon should not be weak to Rock as well. And again, we can't cover every single little thing out there, but at the same time, there are things that we can maybe try and avoid, like having the Earthquake Rock Slide combination. So I think also having a fast Pokemon too, as opposed to like a slow one, would also help this situation, because even though it could probably avoid the Earthquake, well, we need to get in there and hit some damage. So that is also another consideration. I was thinking of like maybe Flygon in this spot because you have that Levitate and you're also kind of resistant to fire, but having that 4 times weakness to ice is kind of annoying. Again, it is a consideration, but just a thought. Some things too is as the rounds grew on, I relied more and more on Dusclops to gather information about the Pokemon and kind of navigate around certain Pokemon. So in the earlier rounds, Meteor Mash, Slam everything, and if not, go to Lapras and hit him with something else. But later on, it was like, okay, this Pokemon could be any one of these sets. We need to learn more. We send out Dusclops, hit it with some Protects and stuff, learn about this Pokemon, and then kind of figure out how to plan ahead and navigate around it. If Dusclops can set up like a full double team and a curse, it can almost wipe like an entire team. It does take time, like to whittle away a Pokemon, heal back up with the leftovers, but Dusclops is pretty amazing and can handle, like, if you can set it up, it can handle pretty much the entire team. And this team isn't built around Dusclops using curse or even Dusclops in general. It's more of like a supporting unit. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of potential there. I think Dusclops having curse on this team, again, it's such a good move, but it almost feels like the team, like having Toxic and Seismic Toss as opposed to curse might be overall just more beneficial as, again, like a supporting unit for Dusclops on this team. If you're gonna go like the curse route on Dusclops, I feel like a whole team dedicated to that might be more beneficial. But again, this is just this is just my run on this team with this and kind of my thoughts about it. This team was a lot of fun. I do want to definitely run it back one more time now that I've learned, you know, for Alligator, things like Aerodactyl are things that we need to be cautious of. But there are a whole bunch of other teams and things that I want to try in the near future. So if anybody has any recommendations for teams they want me to try, again, I have a whole list, but I'd love to hear more. And I do have to build these Pokemon as well, so it's going to take some time. But definitely leave that in the comments below on the build. But anyway, thanks for enjoying the first episode. Be sure to stick around for the next episode, and hopefully you're enjoying your Pokemon adventures.